morning, everybody. Welcome back to the Focus on Photography podcast with Rusty Brown. I'm Rusty, and I do appreciate you taking the time to join the podcast today. My topic today is quite simple. The 24 to 70 millimeter f2.8 is my all-time favorite lens. I'm going to talk about that a little bit today, and I'm going to talk about why. Yep, there are a sea of really good lenses out there. And for those of you that are actually watching, as opposed to just listening, you can see behind me that I have several lenses. All of them, I think, do an amazing job at what they do. But if I have to choose one lens and one lens only, it's going to be the 24 to 70. And I want to talk about that a little bit today. Now, having said that, before I get started, if you are only listening, say on Apple, for example, I'm going to be showing a couple of lenses today, and I'm going to show some of the images that I've gotten with these 24 to 70. So if you're on Spotify, you're good. You should be able to click the video portion and watch it. If you're watching on YouTube, you're fine there as well. But if you're only on Apple, pop over to YouTube if you get an opportunity to the Focus on Photography podcast on YouTube, and you'll get to see what I'm talking about. If you can't do that, you'll be fine. I'm still going to talk through it. But every now and again on the pod, I'm going to be sharing my screen and showing some things. And I also have some practical things to show you guys today. So let's get right to it. For me, there are a lot of reasons that the 24 to 70 millimeter f2.8 is my all-time favorite lens, but I think it harkens back to when I first got really serious about photography. And that was probably 14, 15 years ago. And I remember when I went to school for photography in that 101 course, and, you know, everybody's excited about the opportunities. We all show up with the gear that we think we're going to have. Mind you, I had a DSLR. I'd already abandoned film at this point and was getting into digital. So I had a DSLR, and you know, if you can imagine it, over the course of a semester, which was 16 weeks, we were going to have multiple assignments, sometimes 2 assignments a week, sometimes 1, but in excess of 25 different photography assignments over the course of the semester. Well, one of the requirements for that first semester was that you had to pick one lens, and you could only use that one lens for that semester. And it's a difficult choice to make if you're in a one-on-one class, because you really don't understand the technical specs of a lens. And sometimes you think bigger is better, meaning bigger in size is better. You don't know enough about not just the focal lengths themselves, but apertures and the difference between a constant aperture throughout the zoom range and an aperture that is limited. So thankfully, we had a really good set of instructors, and their recommendation, although they wouldn't tell you what to do, their recommendation was to find a good zoom, because the projects we were going to be doing over the course of the semester would vary in nature and complexity and requirements. And if you decided to go with a prime, and you could, it might be a little more difficult to capture some things. So having said that, I felt fortunate because the camera that I bought was expensive, and I had already bought one lens and one lens only, also on another recommendation. That lens was the 24 to 70. Now I'm gonna show you the first piece of the show and tell, and hopefully this comes through on the video. This is an A99 Mark I DSLR. In the Sony world, it's called an SLT, but DSLR, because there's a mirror in here. Beefy, heavy camera. This is the actual camera that I bought back in 2012. But more importantly, this is actually the 24 to 70 lens that I bought, which is a Sony Zeiss 24 to 70 f2.8. And although I don't use this camera or this lens anymore, I took somewhere in excess of 47,000 images with this. At one point, I thought it might have got into the 60s, and it may have. It was really hard to track. But if you look carefully, you can see the how the zoom ring is all white and worn down, and that just comes from years and years of constant use. The lens has traveled the world. I used this lens up until 2024. And there's some people in my photography group, one in particular, I'm not going to tell you his name, that would just give me the blues about this lens because, look, the zoom ring itself, it doesn't even stick anymore. You can stick your finger in between it. It's like very loose rubber, and I never got it repaired. Um, I think the reason that I keep it around is because it reminds me of where I started and how I got so many quality images with the focal length. So if you can imagine having to go 16 weeks with just this lens taught me a lot. And without realizing I was doing it, I sort of kind of became dependent on it. So that's one of the reasons that this is my all-time favorite lens. Now, mind you, when this old camera got replaced by Sony and they did their Mark II, I did get that, and that's what this one is as well. The body's a little bit smaller, a little bit faster, uh, bigger sensor, higher megapixel rate, a little faster autofocus, all the things that you would expect. But this camera today is still quite functional, not as fast as the mirrorless, but follow me focus, auto eye focus, all those things were there. But if you look at it, you'll notice that I had the exact same Sony Zeiss 24 to 70 lens on here because it was, just as important that I have it for here. And before I got into mirrorless, and I got my first mirrorless in August of 2024. Before I did that, I actually had two of these A99 Mark II bodies and multiple lenses to include a couple of zooms. Now, um, I still have the primes that came with this. In fact, they came with the first one I showed you. So I do, and they're all Zeiss lenses. So I have a 50 1.4, an 85 1.4, and a 135 1.8 that are still amazing. I don't use them nearly as much anymore because I don't shoot on the Alpha ecosystem anymore, which is the DSLR. I shoot on the mirrorless, which is the E mount. So the other A99 II that I had, I sold it. And when I sold it, I sold every other zoom lens to include a high quality 70 to 200, but I kept the 24 to 70 because when I go out with this camera, I'm still going to attach a 24 to 70 to it because that's where my comfort level is. So to that point, like I said, in August of 24, I went totally mirrorless. Sticking with the Sony system, I added A7R5, which is this camera here. Obviously, a little bit smaller, more powerful, 60 something megapixels, fast, autofocus, AI assisted tracking, all those wonderful things. But I still have a 24 to 70 uh, attached to it. I did a video on my other channel, on the Rusty Brown Photography channel, earlier this year called What's in My Bag, where I walk through the different things that are in my camera bag based on the assignment at hand. And this is what came up as what's known as the EDC. And this is my EDC, or everyday carry. Sony A7R5 with the 24 to 70 mounted. Because, again, the things that you can do with the 24 to 70, to me, just outweigh the things that I would have to do if I were carrying multiple zooms and or multiple primes. So that's the history as to the how I got into the 24 to 70. And again, I do believe that that college class having to do that first semester had a lot to do with me having to rely on it because for every single project, that's the only lens that I could use. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go through maybe 9 or 10 of the reasons that I think the 24 to 70 has remained my all-time favorite lens over the last 15 years. It's not an attempt to sell you on it. This is, again, it's just my podcast and my way of talking about what I have, why I do what I do in the way that I do it. And in my world, the 24 to 70 is just as important today in 2026 as it was in 2011 and 2012. So I'm going to show you some images while I talk through some of these things. I'm going to start with this first image that is me from, I don't know, 2014, I believe. I was definitely overseas on vacation. First and foremost, I think that the lens is extremely versatile. It covers, so many essential focal lengths. Obviously, the widest being 24, and then up to the portrait, up to a 70 in the same lens. And it just allows me to make quick changes between everything within that range. Another benefit to that lens is it's a constant f2.8 aperture, right? So to that extent, I can get 2.8 off of that lens, whether I'm at 24, whether I'm at 50, whether I'm at 70, which I think is really key to especially if you're going to be doing some low light stuff, and I'll talk about that in a second. It's fast and it's accurate when it comes to the autofocus, right? It has an HSM motor in it, which is whisper quiet. All of them do. And that type and style of motor was very key for things like, journalism and say some street stuff too. Anywhere you had to make some quick pivots, as it were. So the accuracy of that autofocus is it cannot be stressed any more than I am here today. It's very, very good. It's ideal for bokeh and portrait. So bokeh basically is when you want to get that blurred out background. So in this instance, what I mean is, like, say if I'm photographing a person, I would shoot them at around, say, 65 or 70 millimeter, have some separation between them and the background, and open it all the way up at f2.8, get a really high shutter speed, and at 2.8, that bokeh will look really, really good. So you can do that without, I mean, obviously bokeh is something that's really key to the performance of a prime, but you can get that in a good 24 to 70 as well. We talk about another thing that I find critical to this lens is the build quality. At least in the Sony world, as I'm sure it is with Nikon and Canon and the other manufacturers, the build quality is huge. Like that first lens that I showed you, that is still good to this day, can withstand heavy use, right? It can deal with the weather, obviously, as mine has. It can deal with conditions because it is weather sealed and it's built to be tough, for lack of a better term. So most 24 to 70s, especially if they got an f2.8, are going to have a really high build quality. Talking about that f2.8, this goes back to what I talked about a moment ago. The low light performance on this puppy is exceptional. There's not a lot of things that I have to shoot more wide open than f2.8. There are some, and that's where my primes come into play. But that 2.8 aperture allows for a fast shutter speed in dim environments. So if the lighting is not ideal, I can open it up to f2.8 and still get the shot. And that shot is usable for whatever that particular project is. Another benefit that I found to the 24 to 70 is it's a very minimal amount of distortion and or flare, because typically the optical designs and the high-end coatings on it, they manage a backlit situation very well, which really helps when it comes to providing accurate, clear, and consistent image rendition and resolution. So not having that distortion means that I can cover multiple situations using that exact same lens, no matter where I go. And that was really important as well. Um, let's see. The next one I would say would be, close focusing ability. So if you look at a modern day 24 to 70 lens, they have what we call a short minimum focusing distance. That means what's the shortest amount of distance between you and the subject that you can capture and still get in focus. And the higher end 24 to 70s f2.8s do an amazing job with close focusing ability, allowing you to get shots that are right in front of you, and they're just as clean as the shots that are far, far away. I think another and one of the final things that was important to me was the consistency, right? The consistency in what's known as speed focused environments. The lens above all is it's reliable, it's predictable, and in a fast-paced scenario, let's say like, for a wedding or something like that, or a situation, where you really can't afford to miss a shot, the consistency in what I call speed focus environments, like you have to get, the all important wedding kiss. You have to get that one critical moment in an event. Um, those are situations where if you were changing to a prime lens every time, the probability that you're going to miss something is extremely, extremely high. So I would say that there are other zoom lenses that would give you some consistency in speed focus environments, but the 24 to 70, has the range so that when you're getting that, when you're in those situations where you need to pivot on a dime, whether it's something that's at 30 mil away from you, 50 mil away, or 70, you'd be surprised at how quickly you can make the adaptation to capture that. So for the most part, those are the biggest single keys that I find when I look at that. When I'm using the 24 to 70 in my world, I've used it for portraiture. I've used it for travel. I've used it for events. I have used it for sports. I have done some what do you call it, like some low light photography with it. I am in the studio with it all the time. I did a session earlier this week where I did have a prime with me, but of the three sets that I shot, the last set was done with the 24 to 70 because it's reliable. And what I mean is it's as reliable in studio as it is out in the field. So let me see, I can't think of a situation where I wouldn't have the lens with me. There may be other situations that a longer zoom would work, like if you're doing, bird photography or something to that nature, then yep, you'd want that 70 to 200 or 200 to 600. But no matter what lens you see me with on the camera, I will always have the 24 to 70 with me because more times than not, there's going to be something at that particular event or set or whatever that I'm going to need to get close enough with without having to carry four or five, you know, different what do you call it? Different prime lenses. Again, this is not a shot against the primes. I use primes all the time. But as you can see, if you've been following the little slideshow here, the range and the quality and the depth of the imagery that comes across the 24 to 70, I think it's unmatched. I think you can get portraiture with this lens almost at the same level that you can get with a prime. And even though, primes are noted, I think for how good they are with portraiture, you cannot sell yourself short on using a good zoom and a 24 to 70 f2.8 for portraiture as well. So that's pretty much what I wanted to talk about today, and hopefully give you guys some idea about the range, right? It's the range, it's the versatility, and it's the reliability. So if you just look at those three things, the range meaning all those different things that I talked about that you could use it for, from certain kinds of sports, some of the best high action basketball shots that I've gotten um, came with the 24 to 70. Events, back when I used to do weddings, it was my go-to lens. As I mentioned, I was in the studio a few days ago. Portraiture, I use it all the time, for that. Landscapes, it's good as well. Now, I mentioned it for travel. In years past, that has been my go-to travel lens. I'm going to be trying something new this year, utilizing the 35 mil what is it, 1.8 consistently when I do travel. But the 24 to 70 is always going to be in my bag. I think it's so powerful of a lens and just so reliable. When you take a look at, again, the miles, that you can get on this kind of lens and the wear and tear that it can take and how much it can beat up and just keep on going and maintain the optical excellence that they have. You need that. And if you're out shooting in the weather and conditions and snow and rain and heat and those kinds of things, you really need, that go-to lens to be reliable. So with that, I would say, for the photographers that are following, let me know if you have a 24-70, and if so, how do you feel about it? How frequently do you use it? Do you have another go-to? One thing I'll say that exists today more than in years past, there are so many specialty lenses, niche lenses, call them what you want. I have I think a 28 to 45, and they have all these other different ranges in there now. And, they're nice, but in some cases, it's really just the manufacturers making something to sell you on something that is so limited. But an f2.8, a constant f2.8 on a 24 to 70, it's gonna be really hard to beat. Really hard to beat. So again, let me know how you guys are doing that. It is my go-to lens. It will always be my go-to lens. But again, I was looking over here, not my only lens. With that, that's all I got time for today. As always, thanks for taking time to hang out with Focus on Photography with me. I really do enjoy bringing these types of subjects and subject matter to you, and hopefully give you some insight and idea as to what photography means to me, why my focus on photography is what it is. And if I've said anything here or shown anything here that helps you with your photography journey, then that makes all of this worthwhile. That's all I have. Until next time, we'll talk soon. Bye now.